Hey, before I get going, just want to explain this. This is an unmentionable radish cutting injury. Covering the COVID-19 pandemic, formerly known as the coronavirus outbreak, has proven the concept of the bell curve of audience response to be true. So here's what I mean. On one end of the bell curve, there are people who are extremely grateful to me for speaking up against the media-fueled hysteria. And in the middle of the bell curve, there's that set of the mushy majority of people who think it's just fine or barely tolerate it. And on the other end of the bell curve, there are the angry and the offended. There's always a certain kind of person that's going to shoot the messenger. That's their role in life. Whenever you stand up to the herd that's going in one direction, and you decide that you're going to go in another direction, or even ask questions about the direction, even to a minor degree, you better be prepared for the angry and the offended. I used to waste a lot of time trying to figure out why these people are angry. Why are they offended? Well, I stopped doing that quite a while ago, and it's been great. As the late, great business coach and writer Jim Rohn said, it's rather simple. These people are the angry and the offended. That's it. What would you expect them to be? The question becomes, how much time do you want to waste trying to convert them to your way of thinking, or trying to reason with them, trying to give one more caveat to your message? The fact is, people hear what they want to hear. Now, some people in my comment box and on Twitter and elsewhere in social media have accused me of rejecting the idea that COVID-19 is real, that I think it's all a media invention. It's just all about hype. To set the record straight, even though I know some people will literally not hear what I'm about to say, COVID-19 is a real pandemic. It is a thing, a contagious pathogen that has caused, as I speak these words, just over 27,250 deaths around the world. I do not dispute these official numbers as numbers. What I have disputed is the hysteria and the hyperbole that have accompanied the first rounds of estimates, of models about what's going to happen, because often statistics that are accurate in themselves can still be misleading because they're incomplete. Now, to say over 27,000 deaths sounds like a pestilence of epic proportions, doesn't it? But 34,200 people died of influenza in last year's flu season alone in the United States. So far, additionally, the number of people who test positive for coronavirus who recovered is 132,622. And by the way, you'll find links to government agencies and other sources of information in the links below. I'm asking you not to take my word for it. What I'm about to share with you is taken from a science-based editorial in the New England Journal of Medicine, published March 26, 2020, just 2 days ago as I filmed this. The NEJM is a highly respected, peer-reviewed journal. None of its authors wear tiny tinfoil hats, and none can be called conspiracy theorists or far-right agitators. Here it is. In another article in the journal, Dr. Guan et al. Report mortality of 1.4% among 1,099 patients with laboratory-confirmed COVID-19. These patients had a wide spectrum of disease severity. If one assumes that the number of asymptomatic or minimally symptomatic cases is several times as high as the reported number of cases, the case fatality rate may be considerably less than 1%. This suggests that the overall clinical consequences of COVID-19 may ultimately be more akin to those of a severe seasonal influenza, which has a case fatality rate of approximately 0.1%, or a pandemic influenza similar to those in 1957 and 1968, rather than a disease similar to SARS or MERS, which have had case fatality rates of 9 to 10% and 36% respectively." Unquote. Now, did you catch that? This important editorial concludes that COVID-19 is acting more like a bad flu than previous outbreaks of other conditions like SARS or MERS, M-E-R-S. Who wrote it? Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, and who's also by far the highest profile doctor advising President Trump on COVID-19, along with two other doctors, Lane and Redfield. By the way, SARS stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. MERS stands for Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. So if you think it's racist to call COVID-19 the China virus or the CCP virus or the Commie virus, as I do, then you should be consistent And you should be outraged that the Middle East is somehow being insulted here by MERS. Or that Spanish people were being slighted by calling it the Spanish flu. Or that Egyptians are being slighted by calling it the West Nile virus. Please. Now, Catholics around the world during this pandemic are faced with a special challenge, but it's often not easy to communicate this to people who are not Catholic. And that is, for the first time in Christian history, the sacraments around the world are banned. Holy Week and Easter, as far as we know, have been canceled. Everywhere. That's right. Now, good priests like Father Dan Biddell of Terre Haute, Indiana, have come up with really interesting, in a way, brilliant workarounds, like drive-up confessions. These priests are now being told by their archbishops to knock it off. The explanatory phrase our church leaders have glommed onto is, quote, out of an abundance of caution, unquote. Canon lawyer Kathy Caridi says that canon law provides actually no authority for bishops to ban the sacraments. I'll put a link to her extended commentary below on her popular blog called Canon Law Made Easy. Now, if you're a priest or a bishop and you're watching this, I would love for you to post the relevant canons in the comment box as well to show where she goes wrong. I just bought a bunch of these Brussels sprouts at my local grocery store, just like this one. I was allowed to walk in the store. I was allowed to touch whatever fruit or vegetable I wanted to. It's all open there in the stands. I didn't know who's been contaminating them with the coronavirus since the quarantine began. In the last 2 weeks, I've chatted with clerks and been given cash and coins and exchanged both. These cash and coins have been handled dozens of times in the last couple of weeks, and the interaction with the clerks is certainly under 6 feet of social distancing because they're not going to throw a bunch of change at me. And yet our bishops have made it all but impossible for the faithful to come up with alternatives that do respect the proper safeguards. Because no one, apart from psychopaths, wants this coronavirus to spread. Now, these workarounds would give us the opportunity to either receive absolution from our sins, or we would be able to mourn our dead with a proper funeral, baptize new Christians, get married, and receive the body and blood, soul and divinity of Jesus Christ, the Eucharist, the source and summit of the Christian faith. I intend no disrespect here, but when you compare the attitude of our current church leaders with that of a St. Charles Borromeo, who's the patron saint of archbishops and cardinals, and who ministered to thousands of bubonic plague sufferers in Milan in his time. Now that was a real pandemic. Or if you compare it with St. Damien of Molokai, who in his time disobeyed the protocols laid down by his superiors and by the Archbishop of Honolulu to take care of people suffering from a disease, leprosy, for which there is no cure, and because of which they were quarantined. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? The contrast here is rather high, no? Kathy Caridi likens the situation of watching priests and bishops celebrate Mass online and receive the Eucharist in empty churches to forcing starving people indoors while you stand outside and eat in front of their windows. If you think that assessment's too harsh, tell me why in the comments. There's one silver lining in the dark cloud of this pandemic, and that is that states like Ohio, thanks to Father of Eight, Governor Mike DeWine, has also banned the activities of the abortion industry. So as COVID-19 and other diseases take innocent lives, Planned Parenthood is preventing from taking even more. As we learned from the story of Joseph in the Old Testament in Genesis and his betraying brothers, that's how God works in history. He brings greater good out of evil. And don't forget to be grateful that celebrities like Gal Gadot, Mark Ruffalo, Natalie Portman, Will Ferrell, they took some time in their mansions to sing us John Lennon's Imagine, that tender ode to atheism. Where would we be? What would we do without our celebrity gods to comfort us in our time of need? At least Catholics can still abstain from meat on Fridays. Oh, wait. Sorry. No, the Archdiocese of Boston has canceled the Meatless Friday requirement. So we can't even do Catholic things at home if you live in Boston. Stay healthy and safe, not necessarily in that order. Subscribe to this channel. Click that like button, if you like it, of course. Love to hear your comments below. Check out coffination.com. This is the largest culture building community in the world, now in 25 countries. We have a blast. We're talking a lot about the pandemic lockdown. So if you want to find out more, check out the trailer at coffination.com. Be a saint. What else is there?